Good morning and welcome to our first candidate information webinar for the upcoming 2024 local government elections. My name's Amber King and I'm the team leader for nominations and electoral material. This morning I'm joined with Gareth Robson, Director Election Operations, for the conduct of this webinar.
Good morning, Amber, and thanks everyone for joining us.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal people participating in this webinar. I pay my respects to elders past and present and recognise the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and water of New South Wales. We will be using Slido to receive questions throughout today's webinar. Please join at slido.com and use hashtag LGElections to ask your questions. We will be answering questions relevant to all participants throughout this webinar. We will not be answering questions specific to an individual participant. In this instance, we do ask you to contact us directly. Now, if you do have any technical difficulties throughout today's webinar, please SMS the mobile phone number on the screen and we will try to assist you with any of those difficulties. The New South Wales Electoral Commission will conduct a series of webinars over coming months. We will cover the following topics in detail. This webinar is an election overview for our candidates and our participants. Subsequent webinars will provide more detail on each topic. Each webinar recorded will be published to the New South Wales Electoral Commission's website in coming days, and the New South Wales Electoral Commission will publish a candidate handbook which will provide more detail on each of our topics for you, and we do believe is a great resource to help you in the lead up to and throughout the election. While the New South Wales Electoral Commission aims to support all political participants in meeting their obligations, it does not provide legal advice. Opinions expressed by the New South Wales Electoral Commission are not a substitute for the law. All political participants must satisfy themselves as to their legal position, including, and where appropriate, seek their own legal advice. It is the responsibility of an individual to ensure they comply with the New South Wales electoral laws. The Local Government Act and the Local Government General Regulation provide for the conduct of the local government elections in New South Wales. The Electoral Funding Act and Electoral Funding Regulation 2018 provide for the management and disclosure of election campaign finances and the registration of electoral participants at local government elections. These legislations are available on the New South Wales Legislation website. Now, to provide you an overview of the local government elections 2024 in numbers, the New South Wales Electoral Commission will be conducting elections for 126 councils. Now, Gareth, we will be electing 1,239 councillors and 35 mayors. The councils range in size from approximately 900 electors up to 258,000 electors. We're anticipating to receive 4,500 candidate nominations. We will employ approximately 20,000 temporary staff. We will print 8 million ballot papers, and we will have more than 300 pre-poll venues prior to election day and 2,200 venues on election day. The election will be held on Saturday the 14th of September 2024. Now, for these elections, the candidates elected on Saturday the 14th of September will be elected on a 4-year term.
Thanks, Amber. Now I'll speak about the key dates for the election. It's important to note that the full election timetable can be found on our website. And in future webinars, we'll be going into much more detail about specific times during the calendar. I would bring your attention now to the 5th of August, which is a key date for the purpose of being nominated or to nominate someone. You must be enrolled by that date. Another key date is the 14th of August, when nominations will close at 12 noon. And like many dates on the election calendar, this period cannot be extended. With regard to early voting, the Commission has received advice from the Minister of Local Government that the early voting period for this year's local government elections will be limited to 7 days. So pre-poll voting will commence on Saturday, the 7th of September. And as Amber noted, the election day is the 14th of September. To discuss the types of councils that will be involved in the election, a council can either be undivided, which means that the councillors are elected to represent the entire local government area, or a council is said to be divided, in which it is divided into wards with an equal number of councillors for each ward who will be elected. Some councils have mayor, or all councils have mayors, but some councils have a popularly elected mayor. That is, electors in that area will receive a ballot paper for the mayoral election, while in other councils, the mayor is elected by and from the elected councillors after the election. Of course, where the mayor is not elected by the electors, the New South Wales Electoral Commission is not involved in those elections. The number of councillors elected varies from council to council. Where councils have wards, an equal number of councillors are elected. A council may also wish to conduct what is referred to as a constitutional referendum on the election day. These referendums are limited to the following issues, which change the structure of the council: to determine whether or not the mayor is to be elected by the electors, to increase or reduce the number of councillors, to divide the council area into wards or to abolish the wards, or to change the method of election for councillors of an area divided into wards. A constitutional referendum is decided by a majority of the formal votes. The result is binding on the council. If it passes, that result will take effect at the next general elections of the local government council. Councils may also resolve to take a poll of the electors on the election day. This is for its information and guidance on any matter. For example, it could be about constructing a roundabout on the main street. Again, a council poll is decided by a majority of the formal votes. However, the result is not binding on the council. Our website will include details of those councils holding a constitutional referendum or council poll as we near the election.
Now, Gareth, I'd like to talk about the electoral rolls for the upcoming election. Now, it is compulsory for any Australian citizen living within New South Wales, aged 18 years and over, to be enrolled and vote at the local government elections.
That's right, Amber. And while it's compulsory for people who are aged 18, people who are 17 in the community and will be 18 by the election day are able to enrol and be ready to vote on election day.
And they can enrol by visiting our website, and details on that process is easily accessible. Now, the roll of electors for each council area or ward is a composite roll comprising of the residential roll, the roll of non-resident owners of rateable land, and the roll of occupiers and rate-paying lessees. A person can only be enrolled in one particular council area. For example, you may be on the residential roll for the City of Sydney, however, you may apply to the council to be on the non-residential roll for the South Coast. The residential rolls for the New South Wales local government elections are jointly maintained by the New South Wales Electoral Commission and the Australian Electoral Commission. A residential roll for each council area or ward will be prepared for these elections. Voting is compulsory for all electors on the residential roll. The roll of non-residential electors and the roll of occupiers and rate-paying lessees, which I will refer to as the non-residential roll going forward, is managed by the General Manager for each council. The General Manager is responsible to receive applications for and prepare the non-residential roll. Electors can enrol in more than one council area if they meet the criteria for inclusion on a non-residential roll. But as I've mentioned, they can only vote once within an individual council area. The enrolment qualifications for a non-residential roll can be found on our website.
And I would note, Amber, that if people joining us today intending to be candidates are on the non-residential rolls, they really should speak with council as soon as possible to ensure that they are enrolled as they believe.
And the rolls for the non-residential roll, as Gareth mentioned, will close at 6 p.m. on Monday the 5th of August. Okay. Okay, so the close of rolls for this election, residential and non-residential, will close at 6 p.m. Monday the 5th of August for candidates and nominators of candidates for the local government election. Now, a copy of the list of electors will be available to candidates once a candidate has been officially nominated by the returning officer. Candidates are entitled to a copy of the list of electors for the ward or council area for which they are contesting. The list will be prepared and provided in electronic format. The list will provide electors' particulars who are entitled to vote within that area that you are contesting. It is important to note that it is an offence to use the list of electors or the information within the list for any purpose other than in connection with this election. For example, you must not use it for political activities unrelated to the local government elections. You must not use it for commercial purposes or offer it for sale. You must not disclose the information to another person so they can use it for a purpose unrelated to the local government elections. Now, Gareth, there is penalties in place with misuse of the electoral roll.
And a significant penalty. You should note that the current penalty is $110,000. Just before we move on, we did receive a question about the roll, and it's important to note that you can fill out the form that Amber just mentioned, but the roll will not be available until you are officially nominated, which is the day after the nomination day. There's more information about that on our website.
Yeah, and as we lead up to the election, Gareth, we will make that list or the form to request the list of electors available on our website, and we will communicate with the participants in the lead up to the election regarding that process. And you can complete that form and you can lodge that with us here at the New South Wales Electoral Commission or with the returning officer with your nomination.
Yep, and please review the form, because you will be required to make an undertaking as to the security of the enrolment information that we provide you.
Okay. Now, Gareth, we're going to move on to the registration, electoral expenditure and disclosures.
Thanks, Amber. Now, we often receive questions about what is the difference between registration and nomination. These are two separate processes that serve different purposes. Being registered means candidates and groups can lawfully accept political donations, fundraise, and pay for your campaign expenses. Being nominated means that the candidate or group will be on the ballot paper for the election. It's important to note that being registered does not mean you are contesting the election. That is the process called nomination. A candidate or group is not permitted to accept political donations or pay for electoral expenditure before they are registered for the election. Registrations are open now. Registration forms are available on our website and must be submitted to the New South Wales Electoral Commission by Wednesday the 14th of August. Of course, you can register now if you intend to accept political donations or pay for electoral expenditure. A candidate or group is registered once the New South Wales Electoral Commission has received and processed the application. Registered candidates and groups are notified by email once registered. Candidates and groups that have not registered for the election are taken to be registered following the close of nominations. That is, when the returning officer announces the names of the nominated candidates after the nomination day. We appreciate this is a complex area of regulation for elections, so if you have any inquiries, please direct them to the Candidate Help Desk on the number shown on your screen or by emailing fdc@elections.nsw.gov.au. Further details regarding registration, expenditure and compliance with these laws will be in an upcoming webinar.
Now, Gareth, as you mentioned, there's two processes. There's the registration process, which we will be holding a webinar on shortly, and then there's the nomination process, and I'm going to walk through that at a higher level today. And again, we will be holding a webinar in the lead up to the election specifically on nominations. Now, a candidate can nominate either by a registered political party or by electors within the area for which they are nominating. In order to nominate as a candidate by a registered political party, the registered political party is required to be registered with the New South Wales Electoral Commission at least 12 months prior to nomination day. Candidates nominated by a registered political party must be nominated in writing by the registered political party's registered officer or deputy registered officer.
I was going to add, Amber, that we are aware, and some of you may be joining us this morning, that some parties will only become eligible to nominate candidates quite late in the process. So we'll be corresponding with you to ensure we can assist you through the process.
Yeah. And we will provide more information about that again in that next webinar, Gareth. The other thing is important to talk about is in the instance you are a candidate and you are going to be nominated by an elector. So for the purpose of nominating, you need to be nominated by 2 electors within the area for which you are contesting. So in the instance you are contesting a council that is undivided, your nominators are required to be enrolled in the council. In the instance you are contesting a council that is divided and you are nominating for a ward, your nominators are required to be enrolled within the ward for which you are nominating. Now, we touched on earlier, and it is important that as a candidate or your nominators, you are required to be on the roll by close of roll. So that's 6 p.m, Monday the 5th of August. It is possible and is often an occurrence that a candidate's nomination or nominators are not enrolled in the area for which they are nominating you. So we do provide on the nomination form space for you to provide up to 5 nominators. We do strongly encourage that you do provide us with more than 2. The nomination period is short, so please ensure your nominators are enrolled and please provide additional nominators to avoid any additional corrections through that nomination period that may be required.
That's right, and the person who wishes to nominate you for the election may just not be aware that their enrolment was not in order on the date that the law requires them to be enrolled in the area or ward. So it's wise advice to provide us more than 2. And of course, as we've already mentioned, when nominations close at midday, there is no chance to correct any error on your nomination form after that time. Now, how are candidates nominated? So candidates are able to lodge a nomination form, or they're able to request a group to be on the ballot paper. Nominations can be lodged online using MasterCard or Visa, or by using a paper form and lodging in the returning officer's office. The nomination deposit is $125 per candidate, and it is capped at $625 for a group of 5 or more councillor candidates nominating at the same time. Now, we will have a nomination online management system. A number of you will be familiar with that. We've had that in previous election. The nomination online management system will be available from early July on the New South Wales Electoral Commission's website. It will allow you to create your nomination, form your group, complete each part, and it will also verify whether or not your nominators are enrolled in the area for which you are contesting, and it will allow you to lodge and pay your nomination online using either a MasterCard or Visa. As I've mentioned, the option to use a paper nomination is still available. We do, however, recommend you prepare your nomination early and you lodge them as early as possible so that we do have time to rectify any issues in the instance we do have any queries with you. The nomination forms and your nomination deposit must be lodged between Monday the 5th of August 2024 and 12 noon Wednesday the 14th of August 2024. And as Gareth has mentioned, late nominations cannot be accepted. It is a candidate's responsibility to ensure a fully and correctly completed nomination form and nomination deposit has been received prior to the close of nominations. We've received a question about nominators for candidates and whether they have to be independent from the candidate. For instance, can they be family members?
So no, Gareth, an elector nominating a candidate just needs to be enrolled in the area for which the candidate's contesting. So they can be a family member or they can be somebody you may know, but they need to be enrolled in the area for which you are contesting.
Yeah. And we've received another question about whether nominators nominate individual candidates or groups. The nominators nominate the individuals and those individuals form a group. We'll be providing much more information about the difference between individual nomination and groups in the nomination webinar.
Yeah, it is important to note, and as Gareth mentioned, we will go into further detail, but a nominator can only nominate so many people and it's dependent on the number to be elected for an area. So in the instance of a mayoral nomination, a nominator can only nominate one person because it's only one person to be elected. When we're talking about a councillor nomination, if the ward or the contest has 3 to be elected, that nominator can only nominate 3 people. Again, we do recommend you provide more nominators than the 2 that's required because this is a common error or mistake that is made in our candidate nominations. So we do encourage you to provide more, and the online system will also provide you a count of unique nominators to try and resolve any of those problems before you lodge your nomination.
That's right. While we continue to provide paper nomination forms, one of the advantages of the online system is just that. It's checking things like your enrolment, do you have the correct number of nominators, or more, as we still suggest, even if you're using the online system.
Now, the Local Government Act sets out who may be elected and who is disqualified from holding civic office. That is being elected as councillor or a mayor. The reasons for disqualification include, but are not limited to, 1, currently serving a prison sentence, someone convicted of a certain election-related or criminal offence, someone prohibited from managing companies.
Could I just add there, Amber, we often receive queries regarding whether a person has been affected by bankruptcy in simple terms, and that is one of the reasons that you may be prohibited from managing companies. As you can imagine, this is quite a complex area, and as Amber's already noted, that's why the Electoral Commission is not, it's not our role, but it's a very difficult issue to unpick, and you really would need to seek legal advice if that's a matter that's affecting you or someone you're working on a campaign with.
And I think just as a call out, neither the New South Wales Electoral Commission nor the returning officer will be able to offer advice on any of the disqualifications. So the Electoral Commission does not have the power to determine whether or not a candidate is disqualified. And as Gareth mentioned, any candidate concerned about their disqualification, we do recommend you seek your own legal advice. A person elected to civic office can be dismissed by the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal if it later finds that that person was in fact disqualified. Now, I'd like to touch on electoral material. And again, as we've mentioned, we will be holding another webinar regarding electoral material and the process for registering electoral material. But it is important to note that the regulated election period for the local government elections will commence on Monday the 5th of August and will end at 6 p.m. election day, Saturday the 14th of September. The legislation provides requirements in relation to the content, type, placement and distribution of electoral material through the regulated election period. Prior to the regulated election period, neither the New South Wales Electoral Commission nor the returning officer has any involvement in the regulation of electoral material. However, a council may enforce laws and regulations regarding the size and placements of posters in their local government area. To assist in the preparation of electoral material and the importance of electoral material being accessible, the New South Wales Electoral Commission will publish guidelines and ballot paper samples and instructions on our website for you. The registration of electoral material will commence from Wednesday the 14th of August and close at 5 p.m. Friday the 6th of September. Electoral material to be distributed on election day is required to be registered with the New South Wales Electoral Commission. The New South Wales Electoral Commission will have an online registration of electoral material system available, and we do recommend that you start preparing your electoral material for registration early.
Before we move on to voting, Amber, I think an important point again there is about the fixed election timelines. And if you wish to distribute, for instance, especially how to vote material on the election day, you will need to have that registered. It's an offence to distribute material that isn't registered on the election day.
And that material is required to meet certain guidelines, as we've touched on. So we will go through that in further webinars, Gareth. But any material that is distributed is required to meet those legislative requirements. So you are required to have the authoriser's details, the printer's details, and we do recommend, please do not print your electoral material before you have completed that registration process and we have received a certificate or approval that that material has met the requirements of the legislation.
Definitely.
And we do have, or will have, samples available for you on the website in the lead up to the election, and we'll also provide guidance about posters and any social media advertising in the next webinars.
And thank you for the question we've received about whether a campaign website would be considered electoral material. Now, electoral material can be anything. It can be the how to vote material we're used to receiving on election day, but it does also include websites and social media. And we'll be providing further information in the electoral material website. And there is information available on our own website about that topic now, but we can certainly provide you further information about electoral material on the internet in upcoming webinars.
Thanks, Gareth. So moving on to voting, and we're just going to touch on that.
So the following early voting options are available to eligible electors. Pre-poll voting, and as I mentioned earlier, the pre-poll voting period will be starting on the Saturday prior to election day. Postal voting and telephone-assisted voting, but it's only for electors who are blind or who have low vision.
Now, Gareth, we have received a question. What options do overseas-based voters have to cast their vote?
The primary option for people who are overseas and are, for that reason, unable to vote will be postal vote.
Okay, and again, we'll be talking about the postal vote and the online postal vote application process in future webinars.
That's right. Voting on the election day, polling places will be open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the 14th of September 2024. It's important to note that there is no absent voting at local government elections, so an elector can only vote in their local government area or ward.
Now, if you do have any questions, as we've mentioned, please, we will be using slido.com. Please access the website and please ask your question using hashtag #LGElections. Now, Gareth, we have got a few more questions that have come through. When will the 2024 candidate handbook be available? Now, that's something we're very busy trying to get ready for you, and we are hopeful we will have it on the website in coming weeks.
That's right. We'll be publishing the information on our website in a way we hope is more useful to participants. But yes, that, as Amber said, that will certainly be available soon.
And what we will do is we will distribute an election bulletin. So we will be communicating in the lead up to the election using election bulletins, and we will communicate as we publish further information on our website and make sure that everyone is aware when we have the samples, for example, regarding electoral material. We'll also talk about the candidate handbook in that and future webinars so that everyone is aware as further information becomes available to them. Okay, another question we have is, can you please clarify the minimum number of candidates needed for a group? So, Gareth, for that, there's two answers, and it depends on what area for which you are contesting. So, as a candidate, if you're forming a group for a undivided area, it's the number of councillors to be elected divided by 2. So if we have 15 councillors to be elected in your council area, you would require 8 candidates within your group to request a group voting square. However, if you're nominating for a council that is divided and you have 3 councillors to be elected, you need to have 3 candidates in your group to request a group voting square.
That's right, and an important point there to look into is when you're forming a group, that purpose of having a group voting square, and that is sometimes not clear to all participants. So there'll certainly be further information about that in our nominations webinar and other materials.
And again, if you are using the nomination online management system, when you work through that process, it verifies your enrolment for where you're able to nominate, and it will tell you the number of candidates you need to request a group voting square, and will not allow you to ask for a group voting square till you've met those minimum requirements for that area. Now, our information sheets provided on Council's website supporting a referendum considered electoral material. I think, Gareth, what someone's asking us is if they have information regarding a referendum a council's conducting, would that be considered electoral material?
I think we should clarify that after the webinar, but if the participant's referring to information published by Council, I believe that it is not.
Okay.
However, we'd be happy to confirm that when we publish all of the questions and answers we've received today with our answers.
And if we have misunderstood that, please don't hesitate to contact us. We will be providing our contact details just to make sure that we do understand that question correctly.
Yes.
Now, do candidates need an ABN for fundraising purposes? Now, Gareth, my understanding is a candidate doesn't need to have an ABN in the instance they're conducting fundraising.
That's also my understanding, and we'd be, again, happy to confirm that when we publish the answers to these questions. The important thing to note is that candidates and groups need to register before they engage in fundraising, such as receiving political donations or the expenditure of those amounts.
And I believe our next webinar will be the webinar regarding funding, disclosure and compliance. So, and that will go through all of these in further details with our participants. Please explain what happens if group members are not in the same ward or area. So I think what we're asking here is, can candidates be within a group if they do not live in the same ward?
That's right, and they can, as long as they're enrolled in the area.
Yeah. So your candidates within your group must be enrolled in the same council area. However, as a candidate, you do not need to be enrolled in the same ward. As a candidate, you can nominate for any ward within your council, unlike your nominators who must be enrolled in the ward for which you're contesting.
That's right, and that's an important distinction to draw between the candidate and the people who are nominating you. So please check that information on our website.
Now, can a campaign website go online now, or must a candidate or group wait until the registration process has commenced? And I think maybe we'll split this in two. Can a campaign website go online, or must a candidate or group wait until they've received confirmation they're registered?
The important point there about your campaign website is if you've been committing expenditure in order to do that, and you should be registered before committing expenditure on your campaign. As Amber mentioned, the next webinar will be on the area of funding and disclosure. So you should register before you commit expenditure to campaigning for the election or receiving political donations in order to fund that campaigning.
And I suppose the other part of the question, just to be clear, is a website doesn't need to be registered for the purpose of electoral material. It's only what's being distributed. So I think in that instance, I think we're referring to the expenditure or
That's
funding.
Right. But if we were speaking about the registration of electoral material, we don't register that material unless it's being distributed on election day. However, it's important to note that any electoral material on your website should comply with the requirements of the legislation. We have mentioned the regulated election period in which you must comply with the legislation. However, it's a good idea to comply beforehand as well.
So the next question is, are you saying that candidates cannot start making themselves known on social media or websites until you have authorised that material? So through the regulated period, a candidate or party or a political participant is required to have their material authorised, whether that be distributed or on a website or social media. But they can start promoting themselves now. But once we get into that regulated period, you are required to have the authorisation.
That's right.
But I think it's good practice, Gareth, for anyone who's preparing their websites now to meet those requirements and put those details in place.
And also refer to information on our website, which will be covered in more detail in specific candidate information about the election. But different rules apply to social media compared to a printed piece of material. So please refer to that information.
Okay. And then if we are representing a major party and have been endorsed as a candidate from that party, can we commence fundraising events now?
If you're registered, so whether you're going to be nominated by a registered political party or you're nominating as an independent, the issue for you before you can commence to accept political donations or incur electoral expenditure is that you are registered.
And I think the other piece on that, Gareth, is that if the party is conducting the fundraising events, parties are also able to conduct a major event as long as they're registered with the New South Wales Electoral Commission.
Certainly.
Okay. For nomination payment, you mentioned a MasterCard or Visa is required to pay online. Is that a credit card or a debit card suffice? So the nomination online management system doesn't verify whether or not it's a credit card or a debit card. The nomination online management system will only accept a MasterCard or a Visa for the purposes of the online nomination deposit. Okay. Now, I do want to touch, and we will go through this in further detail, if you are lodging your nomination in person using a paper-based form, the nomination deposit can be paid either by cash or bank cheque. You are not able to use the Visa or MasterCard in a returning officer's office, but we will go into more detail about that in future webinars. Okay. We have one more question. If we require paper nomination forms, when will be the earliest they are available? So the nomination paper forms will be available on the New South Wales Electoral Commission website, again in the lead up to the election.
Yes, and at the same time as we do activate the online system.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of our questions at the moment. If you do have any other questions that you would like to ask us, please do not hesitate in contacting us. And we do have a number of upcoming candidate webinars. So as we've touched on, we will be talking about each of these areas in more detail. In the lead up to the election, the registration for these upcoming webinars is now available on our website. So please hop online and we will send reminders in the lead up to each of those webinars. We will publish a recording of today's webinar on our website in coming days, and we will also provide written responses to all the questions that have been asked. If you do require any support, please contact us via the Candidate Help Desk on 1300 022 011 or contact us via the website. I would like to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you found today's webinar useful. Thank you.
Thank you.